Hey Revolutionaries, I am super excited to bring you this week's episode with Cory Cottrell from Crypto Consultants, where we talk about his recent trip to Iceland. Iceland. It's pretty wild stuff, I'm telling you. So you got to listen to this episode. But before we get to it, I just wanted to give everybody listening out there a heads up about an event that's coming up in Las Vegas at the end of August, early September, around Labor Day. It's called the Nomad Summit. And the Nomad is a reference to the digital nomad scene and location-independent people that are out there doing business online. And it's being held for the first time in the United States. And I have decided to attend. And I thought, hey, if anyone out there is listening is interested in learning how to, do more business online and learn how to become location-independent and interested in, meeting more like-minded people, might be fun for you guys to attend. Anyways, just give you early heads up here. It's not, for a couple months, but what got me thinking about it was I was just in Hollywood, California over the weekend. I was out there for about 4 days. Kind of got me back into travel mode and thinking about planning for the rest of the year and early next year about travel that I have coming up and functions and conferences that I'll be attending. It was really fun to be back out there again. I was out visiting a friend and we were talking about cryptocurrency and investing and social media stuff, but mainly we were just having a good time, and she was a great tour guide and host to show me around. And what was funny is when I went out there, she suggested that we go to this event at the Hollywood Bowl, and it was a Grease sing-along. So I guess it was the 40th anniversary of Grease the movie, the musical movie, which I always love Grease. Who doesn't love Grease? And everybody knows all those songs. But it's not something that I probably would have gone to on my own. Anyways, it was a sing along where they play the movie and they have the words to all the songs, subtitled in so you can sing along. So that's what it was meant to be. It was a sing along. So it was kind of funny. She wanted to go, and I was a little reluctant, but I thought, let's have fun. I'll see what she likes to do, and I'm glad I went because we had a lot of fun. It was really pretty cool thing, and everybody was dressed up. There's tons of pink ladies there and greasers and stuff like that. So it was a little out of the box for me of my standard things I do. But the reason I mentioned it was that, it's just another good way to, maybe put a little challenge out there for yourself in terms of reinvention or trying to see the world differently, or seeing the world through someone else's eyes is always fun. So I was glad that she suggested it in the end, and we had a lot of fun. And it was just a cool thing to do, and I never had been to the Hollywood Bowl, so it was pretty awesome. Anyways, a lot of fun, but it's kind of put me back in that, being on the road mindset, and I was starting to edit this episode on the way back, and got me thinking about other travels that I have coming up. So anyways, if you're interested in the Nomad Summit, check it out. I think it's just nomadsummit.com. Might be interesting for some of you that are listening out there. And if you're going, get in touch and say hi, and we can have a chat while we're out there. And speaking of out there, this cryptocurrency world or universe is really a bit out there. And, Cory breaks it down for us really well in this episode. So let's get right to it.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit jimreinventionrevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hey everybody, this is Jim, and welcome to episode 33 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm talking today with Cory Cottrell, and we're talking about all things cryptocurrency mining, and I want to know what he was doing in Iceland. Cory, welcome to the revolution.
Thank you very, very much. It's good to be here.
Hey, well, thanks for taking your time out of your day, and it's to join the revolution and give us your thoughts on cryptocurrency. I was thinking about the last time we talked. We met down at Podfest in Orlando. When was that? In, I guess, January this year? Late January? Something like that, right? In Orlando. And I was excited to go down there just to meet other podcasters and see what's going on. And it was in January, and up here in Northeast Ohio, it's cold at that time of the year and there's snow. So I was like, awesome, I'm going to Orlando to get warm. And I hung out at the pool, and it was really cool. But I'm talking to you, and you were like, it was like the last day of the Podfest, and it was like the last ending party, et cetera. And you're like, yeah, I'm off to like Iceland in 2 days. And I'm thinking like, what? Like for what? I'm thinking it's winter. I love being in Florida right now, but you were going to Iceland and you live in Florida. I'm thinking like, why on earth are you going to Iceland? So tell me what was going on over there. What was it? What were you into at that point?
Yeah, so I mean, interestingly, I'm actually from the Canadian Arctic, so like I've been running away from winter for most of my life now, living down here in Florida for about 14, 15 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got invited to go up to Iceland to check out one of the larger Bitcoin mining facilities outside of China, basically the largest one that is outside of China. It's with a company called Bitclub, and we had been partnering with them, helping people to get shares in their mining operations, or how they do the whole thing, how they've scaled it so big. They're in like they hover between the top 5 and top 10 cryptocurrency, Bitcoin mining operations on the planet. And so we got asked to go up and check it out. So we went up there to kind of touch the machines. We want to see, we'd been dealing with them for a little while, but it's quite a different thing when you can walk into a room that has like 10,000 ASICs mining rigs in it, all blasting away.
Oh my God.
And,
it must be a sight to see. So let's step back a little bit here and explain, like, what is cryptocurrency mining? I'm sure people have heard the term by now, I'm thinking. Maybe you haven't, I'm not sure. But it's still kind of a wild concept to me, and I've been kind of looking at it and studying it. But explain how the mining works, what mining means in the world of cryptocurrency, and then physically what that means in terms of what's really happening on the machines.
Right. Okay. So down the rabbit hole we go.
Here we go.
Okay, so the main thing about cryptocurrency is that it allows people to send sort of units of value, right? Send money back and forth to each other without any third parties. And the reason why that's really, really sort of interesting and revolutionary is that we, up until now, have required a trusted third party. They have to use a bank or like an intermediary, and that's, we trust that they know what's going on, basically, so that when we send our ones and zeros, it's gonna, my ones and zeros are gonna end up in your ones and zeros account.
Right.
But it's all based on the fact that we trust this bank to handle all of that stuff, right?
Correct. Yep.
So, with Bitcoin as an example, they have removed that third party. And now so the thing that we trust, that we can trust, is something called the blockchain. And the blockchain is a cryptographically encoded and protected chain, basically kind of ledgers, right? It's the record of Bitcoin itself that is, again, protected by this cryptography. Now, the mining is, it's basically serving two functions, right? Mm-hmm. I want to see how far to go back here. Okay, basically, I'm going to try and keep it super simple.
Right.
Then we can unpack whatever parts we want to
unpack.
As an example, every 10 minutes, a block of Bitcoin gets mined, right? And that's on average based on the difficulty. And we could talk about the difficulty, how that stuff works. It's actually pretty fantastic. It's actually part of the open source code that is Bitcoin itself, right?
Right.
And you've got 10,000 machines that, like all over the world, like everybody who's mining Bitcoin all at once, what they're actually trying to do is they're trying to solve a cryptographic problem. They're trying to, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but they're trying to guess a number, right?
Right.
Between 1 and like a kabillion. And the computer that actually guesses that number by, hashing tens of thousands and then millions and then, frankly, tens of millions and billions of numbers a second, trying, is this one right? No. Is this one right? No. Is this one right? No.
Right.
Like that's the hashing power they talk about in mining. Mm-hmm. That's literally what's going on. It's testing.
Right. It's going through the process.
Right. It's it's crunching numbers at a ridiculous pace, trying to guess the magic number that is the key to that block. Right.
Right.
So whichever computer guesses that number, then that block reward goes to that computer, whoever owns it, right? And right now, a block reward is 12.5 Bitcoin, so hence the big business.
Right. Gotcha.
I think right now that's gonna be like 60 grand or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's kind of a big deal. And the back end process, every single one of those blocks is every Bitcoin transaction that has happened in that 10 minutes, right?
Right.
And once that block gets completed, then it gets attached to the chain, and it percolates out to the rest of the entire network. So every computer that is actively mining also has a copy of the entire history of Bitcoin on it. So effectively, this makes it unhackable. It makes it something that we don't require any kind of human being trust. So to know that, me sending you Bitcoin is going to be consistent, right? I'm not going to be able to spend my Bitcoin twice. I'm not going to be able to do anything weird about it or whatever.
Right.
Because the amount of power that it would take to actually go back and affect any of those transactions or affect the actual blockchain itself. I heard one stat that basically said that it would take all the computers that the NSA has about 10,000 years to hack one single block.
Oh, wow. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it just
right.
It's just not. It's not going to happen. And the reason why is because you have this intense amount of computational power trying to crack one single key. So the amount of computational power that it would take to basically hack that network is an order of magnitude or two larger than the entire amount that's actually working on the network at any given point in time. So the process of mining both is the sort of network function, the actual sort of activity, the sort of spreadsheet or ledger of Bitcoin itself, backed up by this cryptographic function that makes it completely and totally unhackable.
Gotcha. So that's a great, I don't think that I've ever had a great explanation of mining, what cryptocurrency mining is on the show before. So thanks for that. And that was very succinct and I think pretty clear. So if I can understand it, I hope everybody else can understand it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so and talk about the incentive part too. Okay, so that's what actually is happening. And in order to get people interested in doing this, there's that incentive that comes from cracking the code or doing those calculations, and that's the mining part.
That's right.
Right. So that's why they call it mining, because there's an incentive to it, right?
Right. And as an example, and this actually goes in with some of our the mining strategies that we have for the people that have assets in Bitclub and mining with us, and even for our trading strategy, this is really important. So every 4 years, Bitcoin has something called a halving event, right? So when Bitcoin first started up in 2009, the block reward, 50 Bitcoin. Okay. Now, Bitcoins were, pennies.
Right.
So, it was really in this sort of primary distribution phase. There was a lot of it going out to a very few number of people, right? And so they were still incentivizing the mining that way. So around 4 years down from there, you've got a halving event to where it went to 25. And what's really interesting is this is actually a part of Bitcoin itself, right? So we say around 4 years because it's actually the number of blocks. So we know that the number, the block reward will come out around every 10 minutes. And how that happens is basically it takes a look, the software itself will take a look at, did the last block get solved in, 10 minutes or like a little bit more or a little bit less. Right. And it will actually adjust the difficulty of the next block based on whether or not it was too soon or too late.
Oh, I didn't realize that's the kind of a autonomous or dynamic kind of adjustment there.
That's exactly it. So if you that basically sets it up so that if you were to add like half again as much computing power hash rate to the entire Bitcoin network, right?
Oh, I see. That makes sense. Yeah.
That block might actually get solved a little bit quicker, but the next one, the difficulty will go up to make sure that based on the previous block's hash rate, the next block will get mined in around 10 minutes. So there's some plus and minus there,
right?
But it means that every halving event is going to come around every 4 years as that block number gets hit, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, it needs that adjustment. So when computers come on or come off the network, it adjusts it. I got it. Cool.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So in 2016 was the last one. It went from 25 Bitcoin down to 12.5, right, which is where we're at right now.
Right.
And if you look at the charts for the entire cryptocurrency market after the halving event in 2016. It's the largest bull market that the ecosystem has ever seen, because again, there's a supply glut. It's like basic game theory, right? You're basically removing, the supply or the larger amount of supply of the main currency, the reserve currency of the space, which is Bitcoin, and you see that percolate through the entire space. So we're basically organizing our entire strategy for our clients around the next halving event that's coming in 2020, and sort of the year or year and a half after that being where you could potentially see the same kind of results that we saw in 2017, which were bonkers.
Oh yeah, wow, interesting. So this must be, so understanding all this and getting into it, this must have been like a surreal experience for you to go out there to Iceland and then see like in real time in like real 3D and like real machines pumping out and doing this stuff. Like what was your impression or what was your reaction when you first stepped into the facility out there? And like how cold was it? And why is it in Iceland? So maybe we should explain those things.
So right. Okay, so and yeah, we'll back up and try and address all of that at the same time. So an ASICs machine is what people use to mine Bitcoin now, right?
Right.
You used to be able to mine Bitcoin with a laptop. Now you've got these application specific chips, ASICs chips they look like they basically look like an elongated, like a rectangular kind of brick, right? A bit of an elongated brick with a giant fan on the end.
Right.
Most of it is heat sinks because they're basically taking a row of processors that are only running the Bitcoin algorithm. They've been specifically designed just to do that one thing, right?
Right.
And they want to drive as much electricity through these things at once as humanly possible. And then you have a fan at the end to basically just try desperately to keep it from boiling itself, right?
Right.
So that's the first reason why you do it in Iceland, is it's already cold.
Gotcha.
Now, the second reason you want to do it in Iceland is that one of these things takes about as much electricity as you would use to power like a third or half of your house.
Okay.
Right?
Right. A lot of power.
They suck power like crazy. And if you see the news, that it's all over. Okay. So what Bitclub has done is they've set up in a cold place right next to a geothermal vent where the power is almost free.
Ah, I see. Okay. Interesting.
Right? Yeah. So they've got thousands of these things in a room, and that the oppression going in there, I've got a real philosophical kind of feel and bent around this whole thing because once you really start to understand what's going on, this technology, this idea is going to change the world, right?
Right.
We've been so used to requiring giant edifices of third party sort of the constructs that we imbue our trust with, that's all going to go away, right? So walking in there and remembering that my 12-year-old niece, when I explained blockchain and Bitcoin, immediately said, "Well, Uncle Cory, why do we need banks?" Right? Like I'm kind of walking.
Oh, really?
Into,
that's interesting. They said that immediately. Wow.
She caught on to it immediately.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Right. And all I was doing, I was just explaining, hey, I could send money to you, or I could send money to to somebody in Zimbabwe, and ordinarily their national bank would take 50%, but now with Bitcoin they can't touch it. They don't have anything to do with it. So yeah, she said, well, why would we need banks at all then? And I was like, exactly.
Wow. It's completely surreal. Yeah. Well, putting
right.
like this visual 3D experience to the concept of Bitcoin, like it's something I haven't had. Like I know what computers are. I think the average person knows what computers are and laptops, and they've heard about software and all these things, but I still don't think that people have a really good grasp of the fundamental things that are really going on. And really that's my whole kind of idea behind the podcast, and kind of getting these thoughts out there for everybody to kind of start thinking about and figuring out how it might
right.
impact their life, right? Because it is going to be different. And
right.
so that must be wild for you to see, man. I would love to see something like that. I got to figure out how to work my way into Iceland, get to Iceland or something.
Yeah. Next time we go up, we'll let you know. And seriously, walking into that room, it sounds like a jet engine,
right?
Because you've got thousands of these giant fans, and they actually have them. They put them in basically they look like little rooms, like kind of a big closet, or like a bedroom, but where all the machines are around the outside wall. They create the outside wall, and they actually suck all of the air straight out of the top of it.
Interesting. Okay.
I saw a video of the inside. Right. Yeah. It's basically just sucking all the air out of it, and they've got all of them pointed inward. So it's basically this constant airflow.
Right.
And I remember seeing a video, like a promo video that Bitclub put together, and it looked like they had a wall of files. I'm like, why are you showing me a wall of files? That's super weird. But you get in there, and it's this big, it used to be a Navy air base, right? So it's a giant warehouse.
Oh, I see.
And one whole wall are these giant canvas air filters. Okay. So it wasn't files. They were giant canvas air filters all stacked in a giant row, because the amount of airflow they have, basically an entire wall is an air filter.
Wow. That's so crazy to even think about. Insane.
Oh man,
it's insane.
Yeah. And that's and it really, really hit me, right? Because there's not really anything going on. It's just super noisy, and
right.
It's basically they're turning geothermal energy into money.
Right.
Kind of literal.
That's
right?
That's it, man. Right. That's the equation. Oh my God. Right.
Right. I mean that in a very real sense, that's what's going on. And then you start to kind of nerd out on like what money actually is, and it really is this story that we tell each other.
That's right.
About having this central idea of value where you can trade a sheep for a loaf of bread and have it make sense.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Well,
that's what I was thinking when you were talking about your niece there, of the story that has been told over the years, over the last couple hundred years for sure, at least for America. Like when you think of a bank and you think about money, like, the images that I would think of are these, these tall, like architectural structures and, big, majestic buildings that, were architected in a particular way to show the importance to society and all those kinds of things. And that's the story of trust that people had to build, in the early days of banking, let's say, right? If I'm going to trust you, I need to see that you have some substantial building. And when I walk in there, I want the head banker to be wearing a nice suit, and all those kinds of things. So this kind of culture got built up
right,
because the trust was necessary, because, just how kind of cultures and economies are still running today. But in the future, it's going to probably look different and feel different for sure. Gosh, and you've got a real glimpse of it. That's amazing. Were you able to take pictures at all or anything, or?
They wouldn't let us bring any cameras.
Yeah,
in.
That's what I figured. But okay,
I think their setup is all proprietary. Yeah. I can send you like the promo video they sent out. It kind of gives you an idea, not of the scale because they're all kind of really tight shots. But
I gotcha.
But yeah. So
great! What a great opportunity to go out there and check it out. That's neat.
Yeah, it was really good. It reminded me too when you were talking about the sort of the edifice, the giant building stuff. I think that's a really, really good way to think about it as far as, the society has kind of been designed around that, right? Like I remember my mom,
for sure,
my parents telling me, hey, you're going to get a good job, you're going to go to school, and you start your 401k or your mutual fund, and then 60 years later you're pretty much good. And that story never really made any sense to me because I looked at the returns on mutual funds based on, because I've been looking into trading and Forex and equities and things. So I know how much the banks are making.
Right.
And it's not pursuant to how much, they're making on our money.
Right.
And watching the crash in 09, what happened to my aunt, what happened to my mom? Like she basically lost half, right? A lot of people did. And in very real terms, she was basically looking at, okay, well, I got to work for another 10 years then.
Right. Yeah. If you needed the value of your house, for example, like right then, because you needed cash because you were sick or you were banking on cashing out and retiring, it's like, think again.
Yeah.
Forget it.
And the really freaky thing, I read a book called The Black Swan, and like I did a bunch of other kind of a lot of other reading about exactly what was going on. Right. If you get a chance, watch The Big Short. It's basically where even just banks taking a deposit are then allowed to leverage that money 300x to get into these derivative swaps and stuff like that, right? Which is why it's a giant, huge busted deck of cards that with a tornado next door, like it's ready to come down all the time. And we saw like a little snapshot of what happens when that stuff starts to fall apart.
Right.
And at the same time that people, the same banks that were holding the mutual funds were shorting the underlying assets in like another room, another wing of their bank,
right?
That were basically destroying their customers' value. So that trust that we have imbued with these edifices, these giant buildings, the guys with the suits, is busted. It's busted. So that's part of why the second I started to really understand what was going on with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I really just decided that I wanted to do it. As an example, like I was in Forex for a couple of years, was learning how to do it, and my first year in, I made 30%, which in Forex is like not horrible at all. And I knew that if I was going to get really good at it, I was going to have to study it. Like I was going to have to become like a ninja, right? Because I knew that it wasn't anywhere near there, and I was going to really have to buckle down.
Right.
Here's the problem.
Not a casual endeavor. Yeah.
Right. Just like I can make money doing it, but it didn't matter. Right. Like you're literally just kind of surfing the giant waves between nations trading currency back and forth. It's just there's nothing relevant. And then cryptocurrency comes along and says, hey, we're going to change the whole freaking world.
Right. And you're like, what?
When you realize, right. When you realize that Bitcoin by itself can destroy the entire banking industry, all of it, all over the world.
Right.
Like without question. Right. It's like to me, that's inevitable now. Like if you own a bank, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Unless you change.
Yeah.
And you look at what Ethereum or even now EOS, we were going to chat about that a little bit.
Right.
What they're doing. I mean, obviously you can run any kind of sort of large software on it, but Ethereum could basically be Wall Street, only better and global.
Right. Well, you know what? Before we dig into that, I wanted to kind of like just rewind a little bit, and because you're so knowledgeable about this, and we want to get to the EOS and Ethereum thing because that's so interesting, and also talk about what you're doing next with your fund and stuff that you're working on. But What was your background like getting into this? Because this is so new that, like, you know, when you were going to college or when I was going to college, like, there was no Bitcoin. There was no cryptocurrency, right? It wasn't even an idea in anyone's mind yet. And, you know, so how did you get interested in this stuff? And how did you get interested in, I guess, trading in particular? Was this your background? Did you study finance, or where'd you come from?
Yeah, so I've been a musician for a long time, and I ended up following my now wife out to San Diego, where gigs were really, really easy to find.
Okay.
And then she got an amazing job at the VA in Tucson, so we moved there, and the gigs were not to be found.
Oh,
and so I spent about 6 months. Okay. Right?
That's interesting. Not compared to San Diego, for sure. Yeah.
No, San Diego was great.
Yeah.
I literally like booked inside of 6 weeks when we moved out there. It was awesome. But yeah, I got really bored in Tucson, and you know, I was the kind of person that I've always been into technology. I've been tracking it. You know, like I paper traded the Google IPO, for example, which of course didn't make me any money. But you kind of knew where it was going, and I'm always tapped into that world.
Right.
But I started losing my mind. Like I just didn't know what to do. So okay, I got nothing to do during the day anyway. So you know, I might as well start just kind of reading on some stuff. And that's when Tesla was doing their IPO. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to study equities, and I'm going to study trading, because what the hell am I going to do?
Right. Why not? Right.
Yeah, I started getting books and started learning about it, and started basically just paper trading equities charts and learning how all that stuff worked. And that was fun. You know, I had kind of small accounts. It wasn't really doing too much with it. But then, we moved back here to Florida, and I met a really, really good friend of mine now who basically gave me all of his textbooks for Forex, which of course is frankly, it's a much, much bigger market than equities. So some of the charts just kind of work better. They kind of behave more.
I see.
If you're following the right system. So basically got to learn all that for free. It was like a $25,000 course. I got to just kind of consume all the textbooks and stuff. So that was fun. And right around that time, I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and Andreas Antonopoulos was on his podcast.
Oh.
I think it was probably like 2013, 2014, the first time I heard about it.
Gotcha.
And he's talking about this Bitcoin thing that's basically like, hey, somebody invented a new kind of money.
And you're like, what?
Yeah, I remember, and he's great. If you ever any of his talks, any of his podcast appearances, he's kind of the man when it comes to this stuff.
Gotcha.
And he's basically talking about the philosophy behind it and what it might be able to do. And I just remember thinking that there's no way the U.S. government's going to let another currency come on. That's silly. There's no way that's going to happen.
Right.
And 2 years later, Bitcoin goes up to like 1,000. And crashes because of the whole Mt. Gox kind of thing, right?
Right.
And started coming down in 2014, and excuse me, and I just from looking at the charts, I was looking at the Bitcoin chart. I'm like, there's no way that's going to go under 200. Right? It was like right around, I think it was right around 320 when I made my kind of. It's sort of infamous inner circles now. Like it's not going to go under 200.
Right. And so this is like 2015, let's say, 2014.
I think it's 2014, 2015.
Okay.
There, yeah.
Gotcha. Right.
Yeah. And right around then, my wife and I had sold our the house we were living at the time, and I told her basically like, hey, we should probably just put 10 grand in Bitcoin because, it's probably not going to go under 200. And she said, that's that fake internet money that you've been talking about all the time.
Right. And she's like, you're insane. Leave me alone.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right.
And
go write some songs. Get out of here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You have a gig today. Shut up. But I didn't believe in it enough to be like, no, seriously, like we have to do this, right? So because it was an idea, but it was still kind of at that point. Of course, in December of last year, we would have been at 1 million.
Right.
So. Yeah. That's just hurtful.
Yeah. Anyway, don't think about it too long.
Right. Now I get to put whatever scrap money and that's kind of how I ended up starting. I had a friend of mine, probably about 8 months ago, my now partner Travis Morehead, comes to me and says, have you heard of Bitcoin? I said, yeah, I almost put money back in. Like, where's it at now?
Right.
And he says 5,000, and I almost threw up.
Right.
And so he said, yeah, Bitcoin's, and that was like that was amazing. But he said, have you heard of the altcoins yet? And I seriously hadn't. Like, I didn't even know what he was talking about. I kind of had heard of Ethereum. Right. But I didn't really know, what was going on with it and stuff. And so he said, yeah, a buddy of mine, this 26-year-old kid, put 10 grand worth of, I think it was like gambling poker money or whatever, right? he got 10 grand worth of Bitcoin and just figured he'd throw it into some of these altcoins. And the kid made 700 grand. I'm like,
right.
What? What?
Right.
So
it's a little hard to believe when you really think about this, but it's happening. Yeah.
Right. So we started taking a look at it and started investing ourselves, and people started asking us like, hey, how can we make money too? And we, before that, hadn't figured out how to kind of help people, with actual trading accounts and stuff.
Right.
So we were helping them get into basically Bitclub, right? Which lets people buy shares, and we get a little commission for that. So it's kind of worth it for us to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now we're launching our personal portfolio service, because basically what we figured out is like an algorithm based on like a top 10 index. You have like tech indexes or the steel index or the S&P 500, right?
Yep.
We're now developing algorithms that will run those same kind of situations, but with the cryptocurrency market. And we actually set people up with portfolios and run them based on those algorithms. And the back tests are amazing. Like, we basically ran the same system that we're helping people get into now. We ran through all the calendar year 2017, and legit, starting January 1, if you put 10 grand in with our system and us taking fees, like we take 10% of net profits and 10% for setup. After that, you would have had $960,000 at the end of the year.
Yeah, not too shabby, huh? Of course, that was a good year. Right.
Exactly. 2017 was bonkers.
Yeah, it was bonkers.
That wasn't just a good year. It was like a banner crazy year.
That's right.
So we're looking now at the same amount of market cap increase will probably take us to about 6 to 8 trillion moving forward.
Right.
And our best guess for that, like
which is about triple where it is now. What would you say?
15x where it's at now.
Oh, I thought it was about 200 or 300.
300, 400 billion right now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So you're looking at about 15 times to get to 6 trillion.
Oh, 6 trillion, you said. Okay, gotcha.
Right. Yeah. A little bit more to get to 8. So yeah, I think we the first sort of window where we're going to be looking at that is 3 years. But again, after that halving event, anywhere from 3 to 4 years is very likely where we're going to see the same kind of numbers. So that's sort of what we're preparing people for, right? Like the next couple of years are going to be decent, but not potentially not amazing. I mean, with all the things like EOS, for example, that are coming out, we could absolutely have another 2017. There's nothing stopping it. Right. But again, like just statistically, right? We want to prepare people kind of for the longer haul. But the level of certainty that we have is
well, that was going to be my next question. So like, what you just described was, I think what, if people were paying attention over the last couple of years, was kind of like this hype cycle of like, oh my God, maybe this stuff is real. People are just finding out about it. And it was a little crazy. Like, people were making crazy amounts of money. But, if you bought a bunch of Bitcoin at 20,000, you're not doing very well right now.
Right.
And so my question was, now that you're in it, and now that you see all these things, and you've been to Iceland, and you've seen actually mining setups, and you know a lot more about the industry, maybe talk a little bit about like, Ethereum and EOS and the things that are going on that really keep demonstrating that this is for real, that this is really going to be impactful, that this is a structural change. It's different from what maybe people are just thinking, like, oh, this is just a bunch of hype and a bunch of ICO mania or whatever,
Yeah, no, I think that's that's my favorite topic in the whole world.
Okay.
So when Bitcoin hit 15,000, we started telling our clients to stop buying it. Because when things go parabolic, they retrace parabolically. It's a common known fact. Like you were talking about the sort of hype cycle.
Right.
That happens. What's really fun is if you look at Bitcoin when it crossed from sort of the ones into the tens and the tens into the hundreds and the hundreds into the thousands, it's actually done this 4 other times. So when people say, "Oh my goodness, it's a bubble and it's popped," well, it's kind of like a bubble that keeps popping. Right. You'll have that hype cycle that truly is just obnoxiously irrational, and then it'll reset to kind of the historical trend line, right? Which is sort of where we're at right now.
Gotcha.
Now, the entire time that it's been falling, we've been looking at the news. Like, I read about 5 to 10 articles on cryptocurrency every morning before I got out of bed. Right. I just kind of scan them.
Right.
Because history is happening every single day. Like, Bitcoin's going down and everyone's like, oh my goodness, the world is over, blah, blah, blah. And we know it's not. So, I just want to know what's actually happening in this space, right? Australia is talking about running their entire government on the blockchain. Switzerland and a few other countries are now, their national banks are talking about opening up a cryptocurrency as a hedge against the next possible downturn. JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs, right, have all started cryptocurrency trading desks in the last 5 weeks. Coinbase, which is the largest cryptocurrency to fiat sort of portal that we have in the United States, is spending most of their development money on creating portals for institutional money to get into cryptocurrency, right? Like just stuff on top of stuff. As an example, so Ethereum is where basically the ERC20 tokens, which are kind of like branded versions of Ethereum, that's half of the ICOs that happen. Like most of the cryptocurrency ecosystem right now is actually just Ethereum. It's like the programming language that all of this stuff is built on top of, right?
Right.
And EOS is like the next intense version of that. It's taken a lot of the issues that Ethereum has had, both with security and scalability and things, and just blew them out of the water.
So EOS is not part of Ethereum at all. Is that correct?
So right now it is.
Okay.
Right, because they did their ICO.
That's what this announcement was. Got it. Okay.
Right. So I was announcing today that so the people that bought EOS, what they actually bought was an ERC20 or an Ethereum token.
Gotcha.
Right, and when EOS launches their main net, which will effectively be this, Ethereum 3.0 kind of thing, they will transfer over to that, which is why, I put the urgent notice out on Facebook. Basically, the people that have it in a trading platform like Binance, they're actually going to do the swap for you. You don't really have to worry. But for the people that have bought it and say put it in cold storage, if you don't register those tokens, then you literally will lose everything. So it's sort of a big deal to make sure that people get their stuff squared away. If they don't just have it on one of those sort of bigger trading platforms like Binance and stuff. Yeah. So the whole time the market is like fading over the last 3 months, the news hasn't been it hasn't slowed down at all.
Yeah.
Like Ethereum is still crushing it. EOS is coming out, and the things that it could do are you could run an entire government on it. It's designed to be sort of a trustless operating system for the entire internet, but just for anything that we could think of. It's I think the things like Ethereum and EOS will sort of enable. I don't think anyone's even thought of the killer app for it yet. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
And what's already existing will kill Wall Street, will kill banks, and will basically completely and totally reorganize all government as we know it. And I still don't think those are the biggest things that this will do.
Well, that's a mouthful right there, man. I'm just thinking about wait, what did you just say? That brings up a couple of questions in my mind. I mean, this is big stuff, and I believe it's big stuff. But when I hear someone just say it back to me, it still gives me pause. I'm like, wow, did I just really hear that? Because I've had some of those same thoughts, but I don't vocalize them very often. but that's the reason they have you on the podcast, because you have these other big thoughts in mind. And my question is, the governments and the institutions know this is coming. They're not stupid. Okay, they have brilliant people working for them, and so. In my mind, I was thinking this year, every country in the world should announce their cryptocurrency analog to their normal currency. Why can't they just do that? What's the big deal where, the U.S. says, hey, we have the U.S. dollar coin, and just use that. Right. And then all other issues are solved, right? Or not?
With that, it brings up a lot of, and this is an amazing topic in and of itself, because Japan just announced they're going to do it.
Right.
And South Korea won't be too far behind. So, I think the first stage of this kind of goes back to that initial thought I had. There's no way that a government is going to cede its power to control and release currency, right? It's sort of one of the things they do.
That's what a government does. That's what they're supposed to do, right?
That's sort of
at least traditionally.
That's sort of its point.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of in the idea since they started forming centralized governments. So. My thought is that they would freak out and just ban it. And interestingly enough, the week after I got into cryptocurrency and I, started squirreling away, a couple $100 at a time or $2,000 or whatever, basically China canceled all, shut down every ICO that was coming out of China. And they were literally the biggest market at the time.
Right.
Because they saw it. They're famous for currency manipulation in general, right?
Right.
So they always have control of that stuff. It's sort of what they do. kind of on a more draconian level than a lot of the larger players. And so they just shut it down. They said, okay, we're also going to get rid of all the exchanges. So here's what happened. All of the exchanges that were in China, including Binance, which is now the largest exchange on the face of the earth. And just to give you a little context there, they did about $220 billion worth of profit in the last year, in the last 12 months, right? With 300 employees. Deutsche
oh
Bank
my goodness,
with
wow. Think about that scale.
Check this out. Deutsche Bank's been around for 180 years. They got 30,000 employees. They did 120.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So in 2-3 years since Binance has really been coming into its own, and they got kicked out of China. So here's what happened. They got kicked out of China. They moved to Hong Kong. They plugged their laptop back in. Done. Right.
Right.
In Hong Kong, it was obviously really closely related to China. They said, hey, we want to see all of your customers' data. And they're like, no. So they unplugged their laptop. They moved to Taiwan. They plugged their laptop back in. And then Taiwan is like, hey, we want to see all of your customers' data. And they said no. And so they start looking for a home, and they move to Japan. Japan starts to say, hey, we kind of want to see all your customers' data. And then this little island called Malta is like, hey, if you move here, we will never ask you that question. And we would just love to foster the whole new world of cryptocurrency and be like a mecca for it.
Right.
And so Binance was like, that sounds like a great deal. And so they left. So that, basically any ecosystem where they are, pushed out, they'll just move. Because they're not location dependent, right? Like that,
right.
The idea that we have of a nation state being that arbitrary line that we draw around a piece of Earth, right? The internet doesn't care, and unless you shut the entire internet off, the whole internet, cryptocurrency is going to be around,
right?
So you're going to have these countries that try and do that. And China since then has said, okay, well, we're going to allow ICOs. They're just all going to be based on Neo, which is this Microsoft-backed version of Ethereum or whatever. So they're kind of trying to have this back-end control, right? And all of this is to sort of show a context of when Japan says, okay, we're actually going to launch a digital version of the yen. You have to really understand what they're planning to do with it. Because now you're going to have you have to sort of ask yourself, why would I care? Right?
Right.
So you have the yen, which will probably get attached to a bunch of banks, and that's fantastic, right? But now what you're really doing is making it easier for me to buy Bitcoin.
That's
you're now on an
true
open
in a
market.
sense. Yeah, that's true in a sense. Mm-hmm.
And anything, if you're making a cryptocurrency, that means that it's going to be on a cryptocurrency exchange, which means that instead of having to going to Coinbase or to our partner company out in Oregon where you have to buy Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And they charge like 5% to buy it, you're just going to have your own yen on an exchange with Bitcoin or any of these other ICOs. Like basically like turns the spigot of money that's going from fiat kind of nation state backed currencies to this new world and just cranks it open. So countries that want to do that, I think Japan's has the right idea. And of course they don't really know how this is going to look yet, but that's the way the world is going to go. Right.
Right.
But they are, in my mind, essentially ceding the power to have a relevant currency. And where I think it's going to be interesting still is that actually Arizona is actually starting to play around this. You will only pay your taxes in Japan with yen, right? You will interact with, the government services or what have you with yen. It'll be a currency that is stable, like a stable coin. They're actually designing 3 or 4 of those now that don't have the mad fluctuations like Bitcoin or any of these other sort of store of value or platform asset coins or whatever, right? So it'll be more stable on purpose, but that will actually be why people have it. So if you want spending money, you're going to take your money out of the saving bank that is Bitcoin, the store of value situation that's Bitcoin that has that tendency to accrue value over time, and you'll change it into yen or you'll change it into US dollar coin or whatever the Fed releases or whatever.
Right.
But it won't be the reserve currency of the world anymore because it's going to be on an open market where we don't need it.
Right. Man, it's like wild to even think about. I didn't think about the aspect if the governments start offering their own version of cryptocurrency, that really just gets you into the crypto world at large. And that's
100%.
Yeah, and then it's like I think it comes back to the trust part in terms of which do you want to keep your funds held in? Which cryptocurrency? Right. Once this transition kind of happens, and it seems like the U.S. is kind of unique in the world. The U.S. and Europe, let's say, or maybe China with the yen. No, what's the Chinese? Yuan, sorry. In terms of,
it's weird. They got a Mexican for a currency in China. It makes no sense.
Yeah, right. In terms of like the big fiat currencies, right? Yeah. The big fiat currencies that are out there, like, you could think about, hey, obviously it's in the U.S.'s best interest to kind of keep control of that. Oh my God, it's kind of like melting my mind really to think about it. But what a great analysis though. This is cool.
Yeah. So, and our take on the whole situation moving forward, I honestly thought for the longest time that the U.S. would basically just come out and say absolutely not. And you say like there's really, really smart people working in government. We watched intently as panels of people on Capitol Hill started interviewing people about cryptocurrency, and they have absolutely no idea.
Well, I think that's true. There's definitely a disconnect with some of the technology.
Right, no clue. And even like the people from the Federal Reserve, no idea. Like they do not understand that right now the whole cryptocurrency market's like 400 billion, right? Mm-hmm. Like for the Federal Reserve, that's not even a rounding error on a 1%. Like it's not on their radar yet. Right, but we're seeing an exponential curve, and we just hit the knee of the curve. So for people that understand how exponential curves work, and the fact that the wallets year on year are expanding exponentially, we see where the trend is going, and then we start figuring, okay, well, what could actually get in the way? And now it's basically nothing. Like Silicon Valley, if you want to do any kind of research development, or you want to do any startup in Silicon Valley, blockchain has to be in the name or they won't look at you. So when the Federal Reserve finally goes like, wait a minute, Wall Street could entirely get taken over? Yep. Oh, maybe we should do something. Too late.
Well, but I think there's definitely a cultural disconnect because they just might not believe it or don't understand it. But I guarantee you there's some people inside those organizations that are screaming at the top of their lungs trying to get people's attention. Right.
That's why
that's why I keep thinking there's like Ripple. There's other things that are happening that I just keep looking at the real banking sector thinking, what moves are these guys going to make? Like, I don't know what they are, but I think like we're going to see some real wild strategic moves from some of these guys, like from Chase, for example, or even from Amazon. Like if Amazon came out with their own coin, they have so many customers and such an ecosphere already, they could really drive the conversation.
They'd be the size of a country. Well, there's rumors that EOS is backed by Google.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, so there's a good example.
That could be a whole thing too. And again, this will be global. It won't be based in the United States. So that's kind of, I think with the basically my argument right now for why, never mind all the trend stuff, which is fairly compelling if you ask me, and all the reasons why, sort of investing for what we're telling our clients, like we're really gearing up for a 3-year process,
right?
Because that's where my level of certainty and confidence that our clients will make like metric craptons, that's a technical term of money, it really hits. Never mind, the halving event is all part of that. But here's what we're starting to see. All 3 of the major biggest investment banks in the United States have created cryptocurrency desks in the last basically month and a bit. Right. That's huge. But when they look, let's say they wanted to get into cryptocurrency and establish like a really healthy position that is a certain fraction of the $1 trillion or $2 trillion of market cap that they have as investing institutions, they can't do it. There literally isn't enough, right? Mm-hmm. So, we're all getting our clients in right now because the thing is they're going to have to start buying in. And when they start buying in, that actually raises the price.
Right.
So they inflate the entire ecosystem just by trying to get into it, just so they have enough to play with it. And once they're playing with it, the whole goal for them is to make money as well. And so, we're going to see this expansion into the 1, 2, 3, 4 trillion, even 5 trillion, frankly, just with global institutions trying to get in and carve out a position for themselves in the ecosystem.
Right.
And that's night and day. Like Coinbase, the biggest operation in town, is designing the institutional portals for that level of money to get into the system. Like that's literally what they're spending their year doing. So that, again, times that by every other major country on the face of the earth. And you sort of get an idea of why we're pretty confident this thing is going to scale. But already, and I thought it was going to be a while before this happened, national banks are starting to look at it as a hedge. Now, like a national bank that releases its own currency, even 5 or 6 trillion, that's not enough.
Right.
There's not even enough there. There's no there for them to get a slice of it to make it relevant. Right. So that's when you see they'll start taking little tiny positions and yada, yada, yada. And that's where you're going to see it running from 10 trillion to 20 trillion and probably beyond that in the next 5 years, which will see more of an increase for our top 10 index fund as an example than you saw in 2017. Like that's like dramatically more.
Right. Yeah, I can definitely see it scaling up for sure.
Right. Like, and that's the funnest thing about doing the index fund thing is like we beat the market. The back test beat the market by 336%. So we're pretty excited about that. Is that a guarantee it'll do in the future? No.
No. Yeah.
But
no guarantee.
if you can 3x something that is itself going 15x, any percentage of that, and we can still be really confident that our clients are being positioned really, really well for what, again, we feel is basically inevitable at this point. And
right.
we have to caution people as well because people are getting in. The kind of drop that we had over the last 3 months, that's happened probably 8 times in the history of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So
right.
If somebody had started with us, if we'd started this, right at January 1, you got 960,000 out of 10 grand for that year, right? And that's real. Like that's just tracking historical numbers. But by now, you would only have 580,000. So again, you're up a ridiculous amount of money, but the way the human monkey works is that, like, oh my God, I just lost $400,000.
Right, yeah, it's a psychological kind of battle in your brain of like, what just happened?
Right, so exactly. So we're really spending most of our time preparing people, and obviously, you can take profits whenever you want. We're actually have a bunch of incentive structures to help people not do that because it's not smart.
I see.
Not as smart anyway, right? But yeah, like we have to talk constantly about it. Like this is really, really volatile. But again, you're going to have a mutual fund that does 7 to 13% a year, and we're talking about doing that every week.
I gotcha. So how does tell me a little bit more about how the company, or what the name of the company is and how it actually works? Like, how many folks do you do? Like if you were going to invest, or do you hold people's money in their accounts, or it's in their own account and you just guide them, or what's the structure
right? So
like?
we actually, that's the reason why we were hanging out with those high-powered lawyers yesterday. We were talking about it a little bit before we came on here.
Yeah.
Was looking into, basically what we started. We kind of want to make sure that we're not going to sort of run afoul of certain regulatory 3-letter bodies that will remain nameless for now.
Right.
As he here's looking at you. Anyway, so
right.
We have to avoid securities laws, and that's really what's interesting too. I was just I'm going to do a little sidebar here.
Okay.
But if you were part of the EOS ICO, right, and you try and register it, you have to use a VPN because they absolutely exclude anyone from the United States.
That's right. That happens with a lot of the ICOs, I think.
Every ICO coming out now has a U.S. exclusion to avoid the SEC.
Right.
Because they can't. They're not. They're just like, maybe they're an ICO, maybe they're a security. We don't know, right? And so
it's happening so fast that the laws and the regulators, they're just behind the 8 ball right now with all this stuff. It's just it's tough to get their arms around.
All the core group of EOS has to do is say, hey, like we're not taking anyone from the United States, so I get a VPN and I click a bunch of boxes that say I'm not a U.S. citizen, which I'm not. I'm from Canada, by the way. Yeah, but we've got clients, that are in that boat,
right?
And so we basically have to navigate that for them and stuff. So basically, that the U.S. exclusion thing. Again, there's no actual regulation yet, but we wanted to find out, what we're doing, if that would be good. And so what we've done is when people send us Bitcoin, we don't take fiat currency, although we've got a hook up to buy Bitcoin that is seamless. We've done about $250,000 with them, so that part's easy. We can do that, but we only take Bitcoin. And then we set you up an encrypted email address and a Binance account specific to this account, right? All your own stuff that you're going to have the passwords to.
Right.
And then we set you up with a Ledger Nano S, which is like a little thumb drive thing with a couple of buttons on the top that basically allows you to put private keys, effectively putting your money on this little piece of machinery, which effectively gets it off the internet. Like it's the safest way that you can do this stuff, right?
Right. So it's not being held in an exchange.
That's right. So most people don't bother doing that. So we're basically like upending the security for people right off the bat, and we're doing all of this stuff for you. Like you send us Bitcoin, we're going to set all this stuff up for you. And again, per our average weighted top 10 index algorithm, we get you into the top 10 cryptocurrencies and position it so that it's 10% of your portfolio all the way through, right?
Gotcha.
And then you're done. We put it on the ledger. For the people that live here, they actually take their ledgers home. Most of the people that live out of town, we actually put the ledger in the safe. We basically put it in cold storage times cold storage here at our office. And I think the most important thing that we really wanted to convey with that is that if you ever kind of want to make a withdrawal, or just want to stop, or want to do whatever you want to do, we're just going to give it to you, right? That means that we've got a whole fund that we're going to be providing for people that last the entire 3 years. We're going to incentivize sticking around, but if you want it, we're never going to say, hey, your money's locked up, because it's not. We're just going to give it to you. However, to make people feel even more safe, each one of these Ledger Nano S's comes with a seed key. It's a seed key phrase. It's like 24 words, right?
Right.
So with those 24 words, anywhere on the planet, you can buy like a $100 ledger and restore your entire account anytime you want. And we're going to make sure that whether your stuff is stored with us or whether you have it at home, you're going to have that seed key phrase. And frankly, we won't. So the only person who's going to be able to restore that ledger and effectively have final personal custody of your funds is you. So what we found out yesterday is that because we're not pooling any money, we basically are not running afoul of regulations that would even come in the future, which was good. It was fun to hear that.
Yeah, right. Well, it's got to be fascinating just to figure out the business aspects of all this stuff too. I mean, it's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, it's non-trivial. I'm gonna put it that way.
Yeah, non-trivial. Well, Cory, we got a few minutes left, and thanks for sharing all your knowledge and just your deep dive here into some of the nuances of cryptocurrency, which I just think it's important to get this information out there and just to kind of talk about it, try to absorb it a little bit. But the two questions I like to ask people when they come on the show is, one is, now that you're so involved in this technology stuff, is there something that you're seeing out there that is really starting to give you pause, though, that is creating some angst? I know it's exciting, but is there anything getting to you about how the world's turning these days with it's getting so tech oriented?
From the tech side, I would have to say that the dissemination of really crappy information, like I hate even using the term fake news because it's so kind of fraught now. Mm-hmm. But that, as an example, I've actually talked to kind of millennials or human beings that think the world is flat, and they're not kidding.
Oh gosh. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And because if you go on YouTube, you can see videos that have all these like big, remarkable, and like, you don't even need a science textbook to figure out, what they figured out in ancient Greece. Not only the world is round, but exactly what the circumference was to within a decent order of magnitude, right? So like,
right.
It's ridiculous. It's patently foolish, but it is now like that. And I'm using sort of a far end absurd example,
right?
But that's an example of when you go finding information, it's information written for people that aren't looking into it. They're not checking. They have no sort of basis in how to reason through the basics,
right.
Frankly, right?
Right.
And that's why we have the president we have. That's why we have the government that is going to be around even when he's gone. Like there's a kind of a lack of, again, and this goes down to trust too, right? And honestly, not to be super biased, but it will be blockchain that fixes this somehow. We used to have this sort of fairly constrained window of fact that we could all agree on, and then we could have a policy discussion about it, right?
Right.
But now, if you, depending on what side of the argument you're on, you're operating from a completely different fact basis, right?
Right.
And so it sounds like you're talking to an alien who's gone completely and totally mental when you're talking to anyone who's like really into the right? Or whatever. Like,
right.
And you can find, like the whole hyper PC culture that, like, again, I don't think is nearly as big of a problem, but it's non-trivial and it's like it's a thing, right? So
right. Yeah, the technology has spawned this somehow in a way, and maybe it's just a growing pains.
I can tell you exactly what happened. People are now leaving Facebook because they're basically saying that the greatest minds in our generation have spent the last decade trying to figure out how to make people click more. And that's it.
Right.
And so, the news that you're getting is more the news that you want to see. That's going to flick your, monkey brain amygdala so that you'll keep scrolling or keep looking. Right. And, that allows the sort of demarcation line or like the tribalism to get to this really, really toxic place where, people are, and one of the things actually, Chris Hayes actually has a new podcast. It's really, really good. Worth listening to. The last episode was on this actual thing.
Okay.
He's interviewing the guy who coined the phrase net neutrality, and it's a really, really amazing discussion. But one of the things he was saying is that, if you go to YouTube and you want to Google the Federal Reserve and find out what that is, the very first response you get is this Federal Reserve video that basically says that it's a Jewish plot to take over the world.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So say you're like a 12-year-old kid,
Right.
you got to do a report on it.
Right.
That, YouTube is where you go to learn, whatever, it's kind of the go-to spot.
Right.
And there's nothing right now that we can do to stop it from saying stupid crap.
Right.
And
Well, I think Facebook and some of these tech companies are starting to like, hey, let's try to reel this back in, because they know at some point they're going to lose trust, and that's the key for their business. So
that's right.
That's right. I think it's kind of growing pains, but it is like painful.
Yeah.
I think it's a good point.
Yeah. No, that's legit. And so I think when every single piece of information out there is on a blockchain that is immediately trackable back to its source, you're going to start to see this turnaround.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think there's some other thing. Well, even like a decentralized version of a social media platform, I think is going to be another way that we won't be subject to the algorithms that are dictated by a central power, or this case like Facebook, that's trying to basically increase its ad revenue.
Right.
But we're a ways away from that, so we'll see how that goes.
I got you.
Anyway,
okay, so very good.
Crappy information and fake news, I would say, is the sort of the biggest concern I would have right now.
I got you. Okay. Well, my next question, my final question is, and I love asking this of people that are just really like, in the contemporary world and as it's changing, what do you do to continue to keep your mind open, to continue to reinvent yourself as the world is reinventing itself?
That is a fantastic question.
Because it's hard to just not just go home at night and crawl under your bed and just cry yourself to sleep at night sometimes, like when the world's changing so fast.
Yeah, I think I'm sort of lucky in the sense that whole kind of Luddite reflex, I've never had it, right? Like I want to be in the future so bad that I'm waiting for it to show up.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And so I think I've been pretty comfortable with like throwing out patterns from a young age, frankly. Like basically, even tradition, any kind of pattern that I saw, I would immediately double check to see if it actually made any sense. And if it didn't, I got rid of it. So, and most people don't, really think about it that way, but that I think has allowed me to sort of be on the leading edge of this and not freak out.
Right.
And even still, for the record, I freak out sometimes.
Right.
Because it is only coming faster. Ray Kurzweil is a really good example of someone who talks about the accelerating returns of technology, right? Mm-hmm. And he talks about the singularity could come and all this stuff that gets right out into the weeds, but I think is a compelling and important way to think about this stuff moving forward. It's not going to slow down. The technological advancements that we've made in the last 10 years will now happen in 5,
right?
And then 2.5,
right? And
then 5 minutes.
Right? Yeah, that's exactly how I'm feeling, man. I see this inflection point that is coming like I've never felt it in a way. And I've been in engineering and technology my whole career up to this point, and I'm like, wow, this is a different feeling.
it is, right? Like, and just in the cryptocurrency space. I post this in our Facebook group all the time. Like history's happening every day, every single day.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why it's overwhelming, which of course is why, we here at Crypto Consultants are here to do all this stuff for you.
Right. Exactly.
Eventually,
right.
Eventually it's going to be seamless and it'll all be easy, but we're still in sort of the right. DOS and early Windows version of all this stuff. So right. It's sort of allowing us to help people with that. But yeah, so that, that really does. So you were asking how I do it. So it's sort of the bit I'd like to share, I guess, is that I've kind of always done it. But I think an important thing for people to pay attention to moving forward, especially with anyone with kids in school or anyone that wants to keep working for more than 10 years, because you're probably gonna have to change what you do.
Right.
Learn how to learn.
Learn how to learn. I love that. Yeah.
Right. The only thing we can be certain of is that everything we know now is going to be different in 5 years. Right.
For sure.
It just. It may be everything, right? And the amount of destabilization is just going to be completely and totally unimaginable. Like all banks are under the gun the way frickin' Blockbuster was 10 years ago, right?
Right.
Title companies,
right?
Cab companies, the whole thing. Like everything's going to change,
right?
And we don't know how fast, but we just know it's going to be fast. So, yeah, learn how to learn and teach kids how to learn, and that's it. Like I don't care what you teach them,
right?
Just have them be able to be in the mindset that they are constantly going to be in a state of acquiring new patterns and learning new ways to interact with the world. It's going to change faster than any of us can imagine, I think.
Well, I like both of those resonate with me. So I like the pattern recognition part. So I'm trained in physics. I'm more of a scientist at heart, an observer. And so I've always kind of looked at patterns that helps me invest and understand the world because I like investing and those types of things and learning how to learn. Two great takeaways. So awesome. Cory, thanks for being on the show. If people want to, reach out to you, get in touch with you, learn more about crypto consultants, dig into the new world that we're living in, how would people get in touch with you or reach out to you?
We can maybe throw I kind of live on Facebook as much as I complain about it.
Okay.
My network is, maybe we could throw my page on the show notes.
Sure,
but,
I can throw it in the show notes if you want.
The Crypto Consultants group on Facebook is a great place to get kind of our filtered take on the entire space. We kind of read five or 10 articles a day, so you only have to read one.
Gotcha.
And so that would probably be the best way.
Okay. So are you going to have a website up and running at some point? I could maybe throw it in the show notes later.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have it yet, but.
Yeah, no, we were in development for an educational platform. Yep. Until like a month ago when we started backtesting these algorithms. So
gotcha.
Yeah, we've been going through a lot of stuff. But yeah, there will be a website up for the index fund shortly. Like we are taking clients now and sort of kept us busy because everyone we talk to wants in. So
I gotcha. Well, if anybody's listening out there and wants to know, I'll stay in touch with Cory. Just get in touch with Jim's reinventionrevolution.com. Send me an email, and I'll make sure anybody that's interested gets connected. So, very cool. Cory, thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time. And remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of.